A social determinants of education framework is another way of framing research and policy so that we bring to the forefront this idea that education cannot account or make up for all of the inequities in children's lives. Using this kind of a framework can help us be better about considering how factors that exist outside of the education might influence our children's educational outcomes. Using this kind of a framework can also help us better identify who might be a partner in helping us to fix some of the issues that are affecting our children in school. As well, using a social determinants of education framework across the board helps guide conversations of all stakeholders, state policymakers, educators, administrators, and it helps us come together and think of solutions that are going to be much more effective at yielding the educational outcomes we're looking for, because there are so many other things that affect a children's ability to perform in the first place. One example of a social determinant education, and probably the most popular one, is poverty. So income status and poverty status are the most reliable indicators of a child's success in schools. When a child is living in poverty, he or she frequently has reduced access to a host of resources, nutritious food, early and ongoing medical and dental care, that child's parent likely has reduced access to good jobs and good paying jobs. So poverty and income can affect where a child is living, whether or not that child has enough to eat, the transportation that that family has, whether or not a parent has enough time at night to come and sit and help their child with their homework. And then, of course, people who are living in low-income neighborhoods or in poverty neighborhoods typically are congregated together, which means that the resources for that entire community are reduced. So we see things like food deserts, where we have a lot of lower-income people that live near each other, and there's no access to nutritious food or even grocery stores in a lot of instances. And families are buying food that is much more expensive from places like dollar stores, and they don't have the same access to that nutritious food. So if a child maybe is not getting adequate nutrition or is not getting an adequate meal, then they come to school hungry. And we know it's hard to focus when you're hungry. It's hard to do a good job when your belly is not full, or when children have too much sugar. We know that that can cause them to have a harder time paying attention and to disengage in the learning. So that's just one way that poverty can influence kids in schools. But overall, having a low income in the U.S. greatly reduces a host of resources that are available to more affluent families. Disciplinary action by itself can have an effect on any student. When a student is pulled out of a classroom because they're being disciplined, they miss learning time. Also, if a student is being disciplined more frequently without getting the supports that they need to change their behavior, that student can have compromised relationships, and having strong relationships with your teacher and even a sense of safety within the school can greatly influence how a child is able to perform academically. So, student discipline applied disproportionately impacts Black and brown children's ability to both perform at an academic level that is on par with their white and more affluent peers. As well, it removes them from the learning situation much more frequently than their white peers are. So what we know is that Black students are identified for school arrests at nearly 3 times the rate that white students are within schools, and twice that for Hispanic students.